Hello friends, within the first video of the year, we're going to be discussing a feature that has been released with .NET 9. .NET 9 has been released a couple of months ago, and within that release there has been a lot of new functionalities, a lot of new features, a lot of new enhancements, but one of the main important functionality and enhancement was the hybrid cache. So in today's video we're going to be discussing caching. We're going to be discussing the in-memory caching, distributed caching, and we're going to be seeing how hybrid cache is going to play a crucial role into making our life easier when it comes to caching. So let's get started. So what I have here is I have two main components when it comes to, or two main types of caching mechanism. We have here the memory cache. And what a memory cache mean here is, for example, I'm using an API, I'm doing a lot of calls to the database. If I want to cache something, the information is being cached inside the memory of the server, so inside the RAM of the server itself. So this means that anytime my application shut down, anytime my application restart, for any reason, the cache is directly being removed and basically it has to be recreated again. So if I scale my application up to multiple services, to multiple servers, every single server will have their own unique version of the memory cache, and basically this will make it really hard if, for example, a request being distributed between one server and the other to have a consistent caching mechanism. And this is where the distributed cache into place. The distributed cache comes into place by actually utilizing a third party like Redis. Redis is a highly available caching service that we can actually utilize. We can use SQL Server, but the most common one and the most fast one is Redis. And basically what Redis does is free up the caching from being in the in-memory into this service. So for example, if this application wants to store its cache, it will basically store it into Redis. And if for any reason this application wants to scale it up, what happens right now is whenever a new instance of this application has been created, the instance will also be utilizing Redis. So this means that both of these instances will be also sharing the same cache. Difference than the in-memory cache, where every single one of them has their own caching mechanism and they don't share it. Within the distributed cache, we're basically relying on Redis in order for it to be the main source of truth when it comes to caching. So that way we are basically elevating the service or the servers from actually handling the caching mechanism themselves. So here we can see by having a distributed cache, we're able to actually share these cache across different instances. If my application shut down for any reason, I still have access to my cache because basically this cache is being stored inside Redis. So this is all fun and it works well, but how does hybrid cache come into place? So although we can see here that memory cache is already going to be utilized within the server itself, and basically for the distributed cache we're going to be relying on Redis, the way we actually implement distributed cache and in-memory cache is completely different. Every single one of these cache has different mechanism. Some of them require serialization, some of them doesn't require serialization, some of them will basically require different configuration. So the reason behind hybrid cache is to basically combine these two. So hybrid cache is the combination of these two together. And what hybrid cache will do, it will take the headache of managing those different caching mechanisms, and it will actually do it on the fly. We don't have to really do anything once we actually set it up. Hybrid cache will take care of everything for us when it comes to handling from the in-memory one to the distributed one. As well, hybrid cache will provide us with a lot of different and new functionalities like stampede protection, tagging mechanism for caching, etc., etc. So within this video, we're going to be seeing how we can first implement memory cache and distributed cache, and then we're going to be seeing how hybrid cache will be able to actually help us solve or basically works with those two in order for us to have the perfect caching mechanism within our .NET application. So what I have here is I have our normal web API, where basically we have built it previously. This web API has two controllers, has a drivers controller as well as the achievements controller. So what I'm gonna do here is, let me zoom in a bit. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create a new service, and this service is gonna be basically responsible for caching, where we're gonna be utilizing the in-memory caching as well as a distributed caching. Once that is done, then we're gonna be creating the hybrid cache. So first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna install some packages. So inside my terminal, let's make this a bit smaller. I'm gonna go to my Formula 1 API and I'm gonna put .NET package Microsoft extensions .caching stack exchange Redis. So what I'm doing here, I'm basically installing the package for Redis so I can actually utilize it for hybrid caching. So that's the first step. Now that I have this in place, next inside my class library, inside my web API, I'm gonna be creating a new directory. So I'm gonna come here, add directory, and I'm gonna call this folder services. And inside the services folder, I'm going to create a new interface. And I'm going to call it iCaching service. Perfect. So inside this interface, I'm going to have 3 different methods. The first one is going to be the get of type T. The second one is going to be the set, where basically I take the key, the value, and the expiration. And the third one is going to be basically how I can remove the information from my cache. Pretty straightforward, 3 different implementation: getting it, setting it, and removing it. So now that I have my interface here, I'm going to create a new class, call it caching service, and this caching service is going to implement the iCaching service, and then it's going to tell me that I need to implement the missing members. I'm going to say yes please. Now that's in place, I can start first by providing access to my caching mechanism. So I can put here private read only iMemory cache. I'm going to call it memory cache. I'm going to put private read only iDistributed cache. I'm going to call it distributed cache. Then what I'm going to do is going to initialize them through construction initialization, and similarly the other one. And now basically through this construction initialization, I'm able to access or tap into my 2 distributed caching mechanism. Perfect. So now that's in place. Now what I need to do is I need to implement the rest of my service, which is going to be the get, the set, and the remove. So let's start with the get. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to check here my in-memory cache first, and then I'm going to check my distributed cache as a fallback. And that way I'm able to actually leverage the speed of the in-memory cache, but in case something goes wrong, I'm basically relying on Redis. So let's start with this one. I'm going to say if underscore memory cache dot try get value. So I'm basically telling it to try to see if it get a value. I'm passing it the key. I'm telling it this could be the outcome, and it needs to return it. So this means if it actually exists within the memory cache. If it doesn't exist within the memory cache, then now I'm going to rely on Redis. So I'm telling it basically that it needs to go get my cache data from my distributed cache based on the key that I have provided. And then if I'm able to get this information out, basically what I need to do is I need to check if this cache data is empty or null, because basically I need to be able to serialize it. And here we can see the different ways that these two works, because basically when I have it here in the first item inside my memory cache, I don't really have to do any types of serialization. It will automatically understand and store the information that it needs into the memory cache. On the other hand, when it comes to the distributed cache, because Redis will need to be able to be compatible with as much services as possible, it will need to basically able to understand different types of data. The way they do that is by actually serializing it into actual text. And then from there, we need to deserialize and deserialize. So that's why when we're getting information out of Redis, I'll get it as string, and then I'm checking if the string is not null or empty, then I'm doing the serialization. So I can remove this for now. I can create an import. And now here, basically what I'm doing is I'm basically serializing the cache data. And if both of these fails, what I'm going to do is I'm going to return a default, which means that I'm going to be returning the null value or the default value of this. And this means that I'm checking first my caching mechanisms, then I am checking my distributed cache. Once those are done, I'm checking the default one. I'm returning actually the default one, I'm not checking it. Now that we have done the get, the set should be also pretty straightforward. So we're gonna start first with setting the in-memory cache. So we're gonna use the memory cache.set. So what I'm doing here is basically, I'm telling the memory cache that it needs to set something inside my in-memory. I'm passing it the key, the value, and the expiration. And basically here the expiration, I'm saying for how long this cache is going to be valid. So I can, for example, have my information valid for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, 1 day, 1 month, no matter how I need it to be. It could be even few in seconds. So in order for me to make sure that my data is actually going to be valid whenever a customer requests it or a client requests it, I need to make sure that the validation date is set. So let's take, for example, if I'm caching, for example, currency exchange rates. We know, for example, every hour this information can change, but the variation within an hour is not usually really major. It could be like very, very slight differences. So it will make sense for me to cache this data rather than calling my third-party API every single time in order for me to get the new information or the new exchange rates. So this is where the expiration comes into place, where it means that I can set a specific expiration time. I can set it for like 59 minutes. I can set it for like 10 minutes, whatever I want in order for the cache to be valid. So if the information still exists inside my memory, but the expiration time has ended, that means that the data is invalid and I need to go to the source and get the new information. So that's why it's there. Now that I have did the in-memory cache, now I need to set it inside my distributed cache. And in order for me to do this, what I need to do is I need to serialize the information which is coming. And that's why I need to utilize that JSON serializer, because as we said, it does not really understand the different objects that we have natively inside .NET. we need to serialize them into strings, and then those strings is will be what will be set inside my Redis cache. So now that I have serialized it, then I need to basically specify the same expiration time for my distributed cache, and for this I utilize my distributed cache entry options, and here basically I'm specifying the expiration time. Once that is done, then lastly I can utilize the distributed cache set string, providing the key, the value, as well as the option with the expiration. So we can see this is a pretty straightforward also implementation. For the distributed cache is a bit more lengthy than the in-memory cache, but again, the benefits here outweigh the code that we write. So now that we have created my set and my get, the last one that we need to do is going to be the remove, and the remove is usually the most easiest one. So we're going to start first by removing the in-memory cache. And for this, we're going to be using the memory cache.remove functionality. And basically here, it will take the key and remove the information directly. And for the distributed cache, what we're going to be doing is we're going to also be utilizing the distributed cache.remove. It will also remove all of the information directly from my application, from my cache, without actually affecting anything else. So this is basically the full implementation for my caching services. It's pretty straightforward, but we see here that having to manage two completely different types of caching mechanism can be tricky. So now let's check this in action. What I want to do after this is I'm going to go to my program.cs and I want to inject those caching services. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to do this here. I'm going to put builder.services.add memory cache. And this will allow me to use the in-memory cache. And now also what I need to do is I need to also inject my distributed cache. So I added my memory cache into my DI container. Now I need to add my distributed cache to my DI container. And for this, I'm going to utilize builder.services.add stack exchange Redis cache. And basically this will automatically configure for me my Redis connection. I'm specifying here my configuration. I'm telling it where it will find my connection strings. So I'm putting option.configuration, and then I'm relying on my get connection string functionality, which is built in order to get my Redis connection. I will need to add this into my app settings. And lastly, I'm defining the instance name, and I'm calling it Formula1 underscore, because basically my application is all about Formula 1. So now that I have done this, next I'm just gonna go to my app settings. Inside my connection string, under my default connections, I'm going to add my Redis connection here, and I'm going to define the default connection settings, which is going to be 6379. And now, basically now, whenever my application runs, it will come to my connection strings, it will go to my Redis connection, it will be able to pick up that connection string and inject it here. So I know exactly that my connection will work. Now that's done, I need to add my service. So I'm going to put builder.services.add scoped. And I'm going to add here, first of all, my caching service. And I'm going to add the implementation, which is going to be caching service. And this basically will allow me to utilize my caching service inside my controllers. So now if I go to my driver's controller, I can start implementing my caching mechanisms. So I'm going to put private read-only caching service. I'm going to call it a caching service, and then I'm going to initialize it through the constructor. And now actually I'm able to use it inside my get driver, for example. So the first thing that I need to do here, in order for me to convert this from a normal get into the database, I need to add my caching mechanism. So the first thing I need to do is specify the key, the cache key, which I'm going to refer to. I'm going to put var cache key equal my driver and the ID that I want to get it from. So that's the first thing. Then I'm going to rely on the caching service in order for me to get the information. So I'm going to put var cache driver equal caching service dot get driver, and I'm going to pass it the key. In case it exists, it's going to get it. So I'm going to say here if cached driver not equal to null, I'm just going to return my cache driver. Else what I'm going to do is I'm going to fetch the information from the database, and then before I return it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it into the cache. And the way I do that by, again, using the caching service, define the cache key that I have, the driver information, as well as the time span for the expiration. So here I set it up for 5 minutes. So I'm going to do is I'm just going to set it up from seconds, just to make it easier so we don't have to wait 5 minutes. And I'm just going to put it here 30 seconds, actually 20 seconds. So now if I run my application and I check it inside my web browser, let me close this, and I'm going to put the breaking point so we can see what's happening. Actually, I think 20 seconds is a bit not a lot of time, so I'm just gonna make it 30 and run it again. So now if we go to my Swagger, I refresh here, let me get all of my drivers first. So I'm gonna click on try it out, execute. I only have one driver, which is Sir Lewis, I'm just gonna take the ID, copy it, and then I'm gonna go to get drivers by ID, click on try it out, specify the driver ID and click on execute. So now we come here, we first create the cache key. We can see the cache key right now is the driver with the ID, and then it's gonna go to my caching service. It's gonna check the in-memory cache, it's gonna be null. It's gonna check my distributed cache, it's also gonna be null. So it's gonna return default, which is mean it's gonna be null. And here basically we're gonna see that this driver is null, which means it's gonna have to go to the database. It's not null because we found the driver. It's gonna be setting this driver's information. So if we come here, it set it up my information, and now it's gonna return back my driver. So now I got my information back. If I click on execute again, I'm gonna come back here. And now if I get my cache driver, we can see that the information is coming from the cache. And now if I click on continue, we can see it stopped here. It does not go to my database. And this means that the application has been returned quite fast. We did not really have to rely on a database connection to get the information. And this is the speed that the caching gives us. So this is a very straight and easy implementation when it comes to implementing caching, hybrid cache and distributed cache. So where does hybrid cache come into place? We're gonna see. So right now what we have done is we have created this service to manage all of this caching mechanism, etc. And we can see it's quite complicated and it takes a bit of time to update it on everything and make sure it's working. So the first thing that I want to do in order to implement hybrid cache is I'm gonna install a package. So first let's do clear, and actually because this is a preview functionality, I'm not gonna add it directly from the terminal. I'm just gonna rely on the NuGet packager, NuGet manager, and because this functionality is still in pre-release, even with .NET 9, we'll have to click on the pre-release. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna type the package that I want. It's going to be Microsoft.extensions.caching.hybrid. And here we can see that this is going to be the library that we're going to be using in order for us to implement hybrid cache. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Formula 1 API and I'm going to click on the plus sign and I'm going to install it there. So now that has been done, if I go to my Formula 1 CS Proj, we'll be able to see here that I have my hybrid cache installed on my machine. Perfect, or actually on my application. So now that's done. The next step that I want to do is I want to go to my program.cs. And after the initialization of my caching service, I want to add the implementation of a hybrid cache. So to do that, I'm going to put builder.services.add hybrid cache. I'm going to specify the options. And within these options, I'm going to basically specify the following. So the first one is going to be options. Maximum key length, and I'm just gonna say it's gonna be equal to 30. Then what I'm gonna do is gonna specify options the payload data. So here basically I'm saying how much of every single cache size can be, and I'm only gonna put it as 1 megabyte. And the last item that I want to specify is options, default entry options equal new hybrid cache options. And then here all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna specify my expiry, and I'm gonna tell it here the expiry time is gonna be in minutes or from seconds. So time span from seconds, because that's what we did before. I'm gonna say 30 seconds. So now that I have this here, we can see that I'm still getting a lot of red lines and saying it's not working. Why is that? Because basically this is still a in preview package that I'm using, and it's still really not fully compliant. So what I need to do is I need to add my pragmas in order for to basically remove these errors. So I'm gonna add those compiler warnings saying that it's gonna disable every single warning that we have. So these pragmas basically will disable these warnings, and it will allow me to utilize my hybrid cache. So now that this is running, if I run it right now again and go to my application, nothing will really change. This will not be utilized. And if I click on execute, we're still gonna go through the same process. So if we go here, it's gonna check the driver service, check it up, getting from the database, etc. It's not really gonna be anything major right now. So how can I use hybrid cache? And that's a very good question, and this is what we're going to be doing now. So in order for me to solve this hybrid cache, or basically add it here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this application code, I'm going to comment it out, and I'm going to create another get endpoint. And the reason I'm doing this, so we can just compare the different implementation. So with the hybrid cache, I'm not going to be really relying on my caching service that I just created. I'm not going to be really relying on this either. I'm not going to be relying on this as well. So how is this going to work? So let's see. The first thing that I need to do is I need to initialize my cache, my hybrid cache here. So I'm going to put private read only hybrid cache, and I'm going to call it hybrid cache. Very original name. And now I'm going to initialize it through the constructor. And now here basically we can see I'm able to use it. So the way that I'm going to implement this, I'm going to put var, I'm going to call it cache driver equal await underscore hybrid cache dot get or create async. And here, what's going to ask of me? It's going to ask for me the cache key that I have, and it's going to ask me for a asynchronous method, or basically a way for me to define the logic of my caching mechanism. So I don't want to go to this directly. Well, so what I'm gonna do right now, after I provided my cache key, I'm gonna put async t, gonna be for like the token cancellation token that I'm gonna be using, and I'm gonna define my functionality here. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to basically fetch my information from the database, and this is already available for me here. So I'm just gonna take this information from here and I'm gonna put the return driver. So this is the first thing that I'm gonna be doing. So as we can see here, well, what happened is when we're using the get or create async from the hybrid cache, what it's doing is it's automatically checking inside my cache. It's either gonna be the hybrid or the distributed. So it's going to be either the distributed or the in-memory one, because when I injected it, it will automatically detect the different types of caching mechanism that currently exist. I don't really have to tell it that. It will automatically check the DI container. It will check the different caching mechanism that exist, and then it will wire itself automatically to those caching mechanism. So it saved me a lot of the configuration that's needed. It done that automatically. And then once I have done that, then what it did is it's gonna basically, first of all, check inside that caching either the hybrid, the in-memory or the distributed one. If there's information there, if there is information, it will return it within the expiry date that I have provided inside my setting up inside my DI container, which was inside my program.cs, which was I think 30 seconds. If it is valid, it's gonna return it. If not, it's gonna go here inside and then it's gonna pick it up from the database and return it. And this is why hybrid cache is really important. I basically don't really need my service that I just created for caching. Hybrid cache will do everything for me. So what else I can do except other than this? I can even attach tags. So if I put here tags, I can specify for every single tag item or cached item a tag. And this will allow me to manage my tags even better. So in case, for example, I decided that I want to remove all of the caching for all of my drivers, I can refer to the tag and remove it automatically. Rather than having to go every single time for key by key and deleting it, I can delete based on tags, which is really powerful. As well, I can specify cancellation token. So I can just put here cancellation token. I'm gonna put this inside my caching service and I'm gonna return here the result. And then basically what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say, instead of returning an OK directly, I'm gonna say if result or cache driver is null, I'm gonna return not found, else I'm gonna be returning my cache driver. And this will also directly work out of the box. So as you can see here, my caching service is basically not highlighted because it's not being utilized. I can comment it out and it will still work. So now I'm just gonna go back here. I'm gonna put a breaking point here so we can see what's happened. Now if I go back into my Swagger, I'm gonna click on execute. We can see it came here. The cache key is the same. If we click on here inside, it's gonna go, there's not a cancellation token. It's gonna go in, and then we can see the get response. We can see my cache driver. And the last item that I wanna add here is gonna be my cancellation token. So I'm gonna add it here. I'm gonna put cancellation token. I'm gonna say equal default, and then here I'm just gonna say cancellation token. So now I'm gonna run this and I'm gonna go to my Swagger and get driver by ID. So I have to get my driver's IDs again. So I'm just gonna get this, copy, get driver ID, execute, and now we can see I got my response back. If I click again, we can see it's getting it faster. Now if I put my breaking point here and click on execute, you can see it came here. I can see it got the cache driver response. Perfect. And now if I come back here, click on execute, can see here that it did not go inside it directly. Oops, let's continue. I want to jump into this. And we can see also we got the response back. Perfect. So now what I want to do also, I'm going to add, don't show this again, close this. What I want to do also here is I want to add this to my get all. And this is going to be a better example because I'm going to be adding more logic there. So I can add more drivers, I can check it all. So here inside my get all drivers, I'm just going to copy paste this here. And I'm going to define my cache key. So I'm going to put var cache key equal all drivers. And I'm just going to take this and put it here. Take this and put it here. And I'm going to do the same thing for the cancellation token. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say cached drivers not equal to, if it's null, I'm going to return not found, else I'm going to return the cached drivers. So now if we come back here, click on run. What did I miss? I missed something. Oops, I forgot the semicolon. So let's try this again. And if we go to get all drivers, click on execute, we can see I got one driver, again, one driver. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to post a new driver. So now if I try to add a new driver, I'm just gonna come back here to the post, try it out. Just gonna leave it all empty, click on execute. We created a new driver. Now if I click on get all drivers, we should be able to get one driver because the caching is still in place. If I add another one, execute, also is still in place and it's running. And now the cache has expired. Now it got the other drivers. So now 3. But again, if I create another driver here, now we should have 4, but now the cache will show me that I only have 3. But once that cache expires, it will automatically pop up to 4 drivers. So let's keep on trying this until I see that I have now 4 drivers available. 30 seconds are quite a long time for a demo, but it is what it is. Let's wait a bit more and a few more seconds. So while we're waiting, I hope everyone had a wonderful new year and happy holidays. And just to promote this channel, if you can please like, share and subscribe, that will be really helpful. If you're finding any use of this, it will also help to reach other .NET developers. So if you don't mind to like, share and subscribe, that will be really good. So now that the timing has expired, now we can see here that I have 4 drivers available. Perfect. So now with that, now we know that my caching is actually working perfectly. So now the last item that I want to cover here is I'm going to stop this and I'm going to update my deleted driver information, because basically here, if I wanted to remove information from the cache, what I need to do is quite simple. So I can basically invalidate my cache by doing the following actions. So I can put HTTP delete, I can give it a route, I can say clear cache driver, I can call it whatever I want, we can remove this, and then I put public async iAction result, actually task iAction result, it will take the driver ID. And here basically what I'm doing is I'm defining my cache driver, my cache key that I want to remove, and let me define a proper cancellation token. So I'm going to put here cancellation token, and then I'm just going to pass this token here rather than the default one. Okay. And basically to remove information from my hybrid cache, all I need to do is call hybrid cache remove, and it will remove it from both caches, either the in-memory or the distributed one automatically. And if you're wondering how my distributed cache is working, I have Redis working in the background. So basically what I've done is I executed the Redis command. It's running right now. I can open my containers and the command is the following: docker run. It's in detached mode. I specified the name that I wanted, which is Redis Stack Server. I defined the IP address, and then I was able to run it locally. You can run Redis, you can download and install it if you're on Windows, or you can connect to an online service, but just for ease of use, I just utilized a Docker version inside my machine. So this has been a very quick introduction about hybrid cache that has been introduced within .NET 9. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, please make sure you put them in the comments down below. If you have any clarification or any suggestion for any video ideas that you would like me to cover, specifically with this new year, please also mention them in the comments down below. If you'd like to support me and get access to the source code, please support me on Patreon or become a member of this channel. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully this year will be a great year for all of us, and have a great day.